Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to do something that I'll come to regret, but that's very me, so we're just going to proceed. Back when I just joined BookTube, Vampire Academy was all the rage. Everyone was talking about it, everyone was reading it. I bought all the audiobooks, listened to the first one, was not especially jazzed about it, but the fact that I bought all of them is still burning my pocket. And I decided to dedicate a whole video to these books. There are way too many books for me to vlog this experience, so I guess I'm just going to update you as I finish each book and give you my thoughts and insights on them. This video is gonna have spoilers. Obviously, these books are 10 years old. If you have not read them by now, you don't want to read them, don't lie to yourself. Just watch this video, perhaps it's gonna be even more entertaining than reading the books, who knows. I'm hyping this up and it's probably gonna be a flop. Time to talk about the first book, which is Vampire Academy by Richelle Mead. It's definitely a book that is setting up for a longer series. At the center of the story is Rose and Lissa, who are best friends. Lissa is a Moroi, which is a type of vampire, and Rose is her guardian. She's also a Dhampir, which is a mix of a vampire, or rather Moroi, and a human. They have certain advantages of Moroi, but they also can walk in the middle of the day and they don't need to drink blood to survive, which in my opinion is just better than being a Moroi. Morois are not immortal and they do have to drink blood to survive, but the perk of being a Moroi, I guess, is that you have elemental magic. Lissa and Rose have a very close relationship. They even developed a bond, which is very rare. When Rose died and Lissa resurrected her, which is not something all the Morois can do, it's something that only Lissa can do. So she's special. She's a princess, her family died, she's the only person in her line, but it doesn't mean she's going to ascend to a throne. There are other Moroi royal families. At the start of the novel, it is revealed that Rose and Lissa ran off from the academy and lived outside of campus on human territory for about 2 years, went to a regular school and hoped to evade the administration for longer, but they are captured. Honestly, the fact that they've been away for about 2 years and they are 2 teenage girls is frankly embarrassing for that administration and the royal court. 2 teenage girls manage to fool you and somehow you're convinced that you'll manage to guard Moroi from Strigoi. Strigoi is a different type of vampire. It's the undead type. These vampires trade their morals, you already can tell what I think about this, for eternal life when they actually kill a person while feeding. And they can also bite vampires, Morois, humans, and create more Strigoi. Strigoi crave Moroi blood because it makes them stronger. They are ushered back to school, where they become the biggest gossip of the day, and also are introduced to a guardian named Dimitri, who's in his 20s and is going to be Lissa's private guardian and also to train Rose to be a better guardian in the future. I don't really want to recap the whole book. I'd rather focus on certain things that stood out to me and themes that I actually really wanted to talk about, because despite the fact that this book was published in 2007 and it is young adult, it has some really mature and dark themes, which surprised me. So let's really dig our teeth into Vampire Academy. The tagline that I gave this book is a tale of internalized misogyny, questionable age gaps, and a sprinkle of ableism. Let's go, but I want to drink some tea first. So, I have a lot of things to say, surprisingly, about misogyny and slut-shaming in this book. I definitely reached and made some parallels because that's just an interesting angle to look at this book through the lens of the real world. Rose is a 17-year-old Dhampir who is the point of view character in this book, and who has some deep-seated internalized misogyny, which was interesting to see. I don't know if it's going to be developed, if it's going to be her arc, but that is definitely what I want to see in the sequels. She is working in a male-dominated profession, and she's clinging to her femininity. She says a couple of times in this book that she doesn't want to cut her hair because most guardians, female guardians, cut their hair to showcase their tattoos of lightning bolts that mean that they've killed Strigoi. She also a couple of times says that she doesn't want to become ugly, which is something that I think she needs to look into, because the women that she calls ugly are just more masculine women. And yet at the same time, she doesn't want to be treated like a girl, she wants to be treated like a professional guardian, which interestingly in her head doesn't coexist with being a girly girl. Let's look at the wider picture though, the Moroi society. The initial idea behind the book already irks me a little bit, but that's just me as a lover of vampires in general, because in this book there are two types of vampires, good and bad ones. And vampires are monsters, they are not supposed to be good. It immediately takes the appeal of vampires as creatures. You can portray a good vampire, but it's at best a grey character, not a hero. And that is what I'm personally looking for when I'm going into vampire book. Making this decision was intentional, I think. It's very clear for me that Richelle, Mead tried to purify vampires, tried to make them acceptable and palatable, specifically I think because this book is young adult. It does bother me a little bit because when I go into a vampire book or a creature book, I expect this character or characters or society to be different from the ones humans have. She doesn't stop at that. She also makes this Moroi, this good vampires, go to church, which was a little bit funny for me, I'm not going to lie. This does seem to be like a ploy to make Christian Americans feel better about picking up this book, because we know how they react to fantasy and horror fiction. Another thing that is very interesting for me and ties perfectly into this society, in my opinion, is how they treat their donors or feeders. These are the people that are literally keeping Moroi alive. They're donating their blood and feeding these creatures, and at best, Moroi and this society in general treats them with contempt. But also they have very slut-shaming rules about giving and getting blood. It's considered shameful for a dumb pair to give Moroi their blood. Is it because it would make them too similar to humans and they don't want to be seen as human? Or is it because there is a power exchange in that act? It's a big part of the plot of Vampire Academy, because while Lissa and Rose are away in the human world, the only person Lissa can feed off is Rose. And while she feels a little uneasy about the whole ordeal because of what society tells her that it's shameful, she really enjoys the act when she does it, and even becomes slightly addicted to it and is jealous over the fact that Lissa starts drinking other people's blood while she is in the academy. If dumb pair allowing a Moroi to feed off of them considered shameful, allowing a Moroi to have sex with them and to feed from them at the same time is completely unacceptable and would give you a prominent tramp status. So the other royal Moroi are constantly gossiping about Lissa's and Rose's predicament because they make the connection. Someone had to feed Lissa. That conflict gave me a lot of very interesting reads on the story, which we're going to talk about a bit later. In its own category, it's gay, so keep your eyes open. The parallel to how women are treated to giving in to sex or enjoying sex are pretty apparent here, because the people that are giving out blood are judged for their decision, and the people, or rather Moroi, that are taking this blood are not talked in a bad way at all. Proper women, or rather humans, don't do this, and it means that Morois can treat them badly. And there were a couple of scenes that were very, very disturbing that included coercion and sexual assault. The Dhampir and Moira connection in regards to procreation is very interesting as well, and adds to this point because Dhampir can only be made with a Moroi and a Dhampir parent. But Morois do not want to stick with Dhampirs, so these relationships are usually flings, and then Morois go back to their own families, which creates a lot of single Dhampir mothers that band into communes and raise children together, which honestly is smart of them and sounds ideal in my opinion, but the book also had a lot to say about that. Apparently, Moroi men love to visit those communes and have sex with these Dhampir women. It's heavily implied that some of these cases are not consensual. Dimitri even shares that he was raised in one of those communes and that his mother was a single Dhampir mother and had an admirer which was violent, and Dimitri beat him up. Rose, though, never changes her mind about these communes. She doesn't want to be a blood whore, she doesn't want to be associated with blood whores, and she also calls them blood whores. She blames them for how the society treats them and honestly is not better than anyone else for doing so. I hope that it's gonna be talked a bit more in the future books because I think that the part of the story is very, very interesting. Specifically that Dimitri was raised in this commune and he seems to really, really love and to respect his mother. So I would love to get his point of view, and I would love for Rose to actually take a deep dive into her internalized misogyny. Speaking of Dimitri and Rose, the guy is 24, she's 17, and Rose falls head over heels for him, which is typical for a teenage girl. They always would rather go for a cool older guy than their classmates that they know way too much about. The story had refreshing takes on this problematic trope, especially considering that it came out in 2007. Just so you understand the landscape of media at the time, I did some research. In 2008, we had Brooke and Nick on One Free Hill. Nick was a teacher, Brooke pretended to be older, and even when he figured out that she is not, he continued to date her. In 2010 came out the most outrageous age gap story between Paris and an elderly professor named Asher on Gilmore Girls. They've had about 40 years between them. I think she was of age, but that's just criminal in my opinion. In 2010, Gossip Girl also gave us Serena Wonder Woodson and Ben Donovan, and 2010 was also release year of Pretty Little Liars, so another outrageous teacher-student, Ezra and Aria. I was myself a teenage girl once. I don't find Rose's infatuation that unusual. As a teenager, I've had crushes on older people because they seemed cool and unavailable, and I knew way too much about my classmates, and it was a big turnoff. Dimitri for her is a challenge, and she loves a good challenge. What's more interesting to me in this dynamic, specifically in the first book, because I think it's gonna go somewhere I don't want it to go. Dimitri tries to establish boundaries a couple of times in this book, and he openly rejects her. He also makes good, proper points. He compares where they stand in their lives at their ages, and he tells her that he'd experienced life, and she's yet to experience it. Since they were under the last spell and it only works if people have attraction to each other, he also tells her that because her body developed, it doesn't mean that she's not a teenager and he has the right to be acting on his attraction. Rose, though, being Rose, doesn't take it in stride. She gets his point, but she still pines. And I do believe after getting the taste of Rose's personality that she's not going to give in and she's going to try to pursue him in the next books. I hope he's going to be firm in his stand because otherwise I'm going to lose all respect that I got for him in this book. I do feel like Rachel Mead, instead of using this subplot to explain why this relationship is not going to work, is going to use it to build a forbidden relationship and add tension into it, which is going to make me disappointed. But I've heard a lot about these books before, and I think this is where it's going. I promised to give you something gay to think about, so we're going to move to a tiny note on compulsory heterosexuality. I definitely believe that I'm reaching here, but it's a fun theory, so we're going to talk about it. Rose has this irrational jealousy about Lissa throughout this whole book. Lissa has fed on her, and now when Lissa came back to school, she started feeding on their donors or feeders. The act of feeding from a vampire in this society is connected to sex and something forbidden. And it's interesting that every single time people bring it up, the fact that Lissa fed off Rose while they were away because people are not idiots and they figured it out, Rose immediately jumps up to say that they didn't have sex, which is a bit defensive and sus. I understand that it's to prove that she's not a blood whore, but if we're drawing very tentative parallels to queerness, it also tracks. Another detail that I'm grouping into Comphet for my personal enjoyment is that Rose has crushes strictly on unavailable people, such as Dimitri, and is constantly asking herself why can't she just date a guy that is right there, Mason, who's a good friend and with whom she has a good chemistry and whom she trusts and who's available. I guess we can count it as her having this big crush on Dimitri and just not vibing with Mason. But at the same time, I'm like, this is one of the signs of compulsory heterosexuality, being attracted to guys that are unavailable because you know that nothing is going to happen with them. This is just a fun theory for me to work with. I'm yet to go check out Archive of My Own and see how many people notice the same things I noticed. The next theme that I want to discuss is ableism and how this novel treats people with mental health issues. Let's start with ableism. The villain in the story is Dashkov, who is one of the royals and who has a terminal illness. He's an unoriginal villain. He is one in a generation of villains with a chronic illness. In this book, he kidnaps Lissa, which in this book is real to have healing powers. And he's trying to force her into a life of servitude, which gives me a lot of uncomfortable similarities with caretaking, or rather how society sees caretaking. It's probably not intentional, but it reads like a harmful portrayal of caretaking. While they're not actually relatives, in the frame of this book and this society, they are considered close to being relatives. Loved ones and relatives being forced into caretaking after a disabled relative or partner is a very popular idea, and it is bad. It's interesting that in the novel, Lissa also says that she would have been willing to help Dashkov on her own without him forcing her, but he doesn't believe that. So that's an ableism. The book is old. I don't think that the author really thought about this element much. And also we're still getting disabled villains in the Bond franchise, so it's 2021, people, we're still doing this. When it comes to mental health issues though, I think the book is revolutionary. Lissa, who mentally suffers from her powers, she supposedly has depression and anxiety, gets help from the administration, and is given proper medication for her condition. I feel like it's a big thing for a young adult fantasy novel written in 2000s. So that's everything I gathered from the first book. We'll see what the second one brings up, if it's going to continue with these themes, if it's going to explore them, if Rose is finally going to confront her internalized misogyny. Hi. Hello. It is officially time to talk about Frostbite. I officially taglined this book as that season of Teen Wolf when we discovered that there is an alpha pack. I would say that the plot of this book was better than in the first one, and if not for teenage petty relationship drama, the plot of it would have been almost good. This book starts with Rose, who is taken away to pass some tests as a guardian. She is with other guardians from Saint Vladimir and with Dimitri, of course. And instead of actually being tested, poor girl, she missed so much of her curriculum. She is dropped in the middle of a massacre of one of the royal Moroi families. They were supposed to be guarded by the best, but these guardians are dead now and the whole house is a bloodbath. So the group of guardians that come with Rose suspect that Strigoi are banding together in big groups and are becoming stronger for that, but also start working with humans who can walk in the middle of the day. Basically what happens next is the guardians are concerned about the other Moroi and they decide that these Moroi are not going to go back home for Christmas. Some Moroi start thinking that maybe they actually should go back to the good old days when they used magic as a defense tool, and they should be trained in that to be able to protect themselves and don't just rely on the guardians, which I think personally is very wise. If you're not willing to get your hands dirty, why do you expect other people to get their hands dirty for you? One of the Moroi who is especially into the idea of teaching Moroi kids combat skills is Tasha, who is the aunt of Christopher. Christopher is another Moroi guy whose parents turned Strigoi, so he's a bit of an outcast. And he is also dating Lissa. We'll talk about Lissa, she's useless. So Tasha apparently also knows Dimitri and has some fond feelings for him. So she kind of hopes that he's going to give her a baby. I know, it sounds bonkers, but she's really hoping that he's going to give her a baby. Rose is very upset about this, which is to be expected. The royal families are getting killed off by this band of Strigoi, and the Moroi and the Dhampir are trying to figure out how to protect Moroi from extinction. I think it's a pretty good basis for the plot. My problem is I could have done without Tasha being in love with Dimitri, Rose being jealous of Tasha because she also is in love with Dimitri, Rose trying to date her friend Mason instead of Dimitri to forget him. Like, that's all too much. You're doing too much. I don't need it. I know that it's written for teenagers and teenagers probably lapped it up. I think all the relationships in this were pretty childish. And I hoped for more friendship between Lissa and Rose because that's what people were selling to me when they were talking about this series. I also wish the author dropped the forbidden relationship between Rose and Dimitri and just forgot about it. Just swept it under the carpet. I don't care, I don't want it. I'm not sure anyone wants it at this point. It's very 2000s and it's dated. It is. The only highlight as a lesbian from this book that I got is that Rose continues to be in Lissa's head when she's having sex, and I'm like, you're fishing for a threesome at this point. I'm also very pleased every single time when Rose is clearly jealous that Lissa is spending more time with Christopher than her. Sadly, that's the Anton Comphet, so we have to talk about other more serious stuff. Rose. She has mommy issues, she has daddy issues, she has issues. This girl is a one big issue. She continues to cling to Dimitri. And that's just annoying at this point. I had more respect for Dimitri in the first book because he was clearly trying to set up boundaries and he's dropping boundaries one by one in this book. And I'm supposed to feel like it's really romantic that he's thirsting for an underage girl. He's saying all the right things and I'm agreeing with him, but then his acting and his actions are not in tune with his words. I like him less and less now. I think he should have pursued a relationship with an adult woman who is Tasha and who is the person that I really liked actually in this book. But instead the guy continues to feed Rose's infatuation, and I'm deeply against that. Also, if you were concerned about the age gap in the first book and you didn't love it, here the author is giving us a second age gap, which is a little bit smaller, thanks for that, but the guy is even creepier. So I cannot win, really can't. The name of the guy is Adrian Ivashkov, which is supposed to be Andrei Ivashkov if the author was trying to go for authenticity in Russian names. And she's been good so far, actually, with the Russian stuff. So Adrian apparently also doesn't have an element he exceeds at, which means he's the same as Lissa. And I think he's going to continue to appear in the next books. It was very clear that he's set up as a character that is important. So the guy has a crush on Rose, and he's being really creepy about that. He's objectifying her straight away. He's like one step away from calling her boobs honkers, and he's real creepy, and I kind of hate him. He's like one of those I'm a bad sexy guy type of guys that were prevalent in 2000 fiction, so reading about him was kind of cringe. I'm not going to lie, it's really annoying that every single male character that appears in this book is Rose's love interests or potential love interests. I think it's very limiting and expected, and I would actually like to see more of Rose on her own, and instead she's constantly dragged into this love triangles, which is really annoying. One of the love triangle guys, Mason, dies at the end of this book, which was sad, but was I sad? Not really. I hope that it's going to give Rose more reason to develop as a more complex character. It's a very boring trope, killing someone to develop a character, but at this point I will take anything. Like anything that is not a romantic subplot, because I've been really hoping that we're going to see a developing relationship, familiar relationship between Rose and her mother. They have a very complex dynamic, and I want to see more of them, and I've had some glimpses, but I need more. I'm actually interested in that because it's at an intersection of toxic familiar relationship, feminism, social expectation, gender expectation. It's interesting, it's complex, it's big. Every romantic relationship in this book is boring, and also Lissa's and Rose's relationship, do they have one at this point? Let's be honest, Lissa is like in 10 pages of this book tops, and it's becoming an issue for me because I was sold this series as a series that is revolving around a friendship between these two girls, and it's just not. It's just not. So she does come off as useless, and it's not her fault. She doesn't have enough page time to be interesting. At the end of this book, Rose kills 2 strigoi, which I think is to relate her to her mother, who also killed a couple of strigois when she was very young. And if Rose is going to go on her mother's trajectory, which I think what this book is hinting at, or what we're going to talk about more in the future books, she's gonna be pregnant very soon. And I don't know how I feel about that. Honestly, these books are not very sly with their foreshadowing. Nothing happened so far that shocked me. And I expect something to shock me. Something has to. Let's hope that the third book is gonna be a bit more original. This one was a bit more dynamic, I gotta say. If not for CW type relationship drama, I would have liked it more. So far I gave it 3 stars, and the first one was 3 stars as well. We'll see what I think about the third one. On that note, I have to say goodbye for now and go read the third book. Hey you guys, I'm back with my report for Shadow Kiss. This book was an absolute banger, literally, because Dimitri and Rose actually bang in this book, which was slightly unexpected. I wasn't sure if the author is going to go there, and she went there, and I actually didn't hate it. I mean, I hated it for age gap reasons, but I didn't hate it for the plot reasons, because The book, jokes aside, was actually pretty good. And I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I know that's not what you expected to see after the reports on the first 2 books, but that's what happened. We're going to start with my favorite, which is a code name for this book. I decided to call it Benefits of Going to Therapy for the most iconic character so far in this book, who is a therapist. Overall, this book gave me really good foreshadowing and more depth when it comes to Rose's character. Also, it gave me actual stakes, really high, really delicious steaks. Literally and figuratively, actually, because they do stake a lot of strigoi in this book. But what I mean is that people actually die and stuff happens to them. I enjoyed it specifically because I lost all my respect for Dimitri and I don't care what happens to him. I know that other people are going to think differently, but that's how I feel about the plot of the book overall. I love that Rose and Lissa finally had a conflict that has been bubbling up in the first and the second book, but Rose was ignoring it, and I think it makes their relationship a bit more interesting. I actually have no complaints when it comes to Lissa and Rose's relationship in this book, because the first 2 books, especially the second one, Frostbite, left me with an impression that Rose and Lissa being friends is a bit of a marketing ploy because there's not a lot to their friendship. This book, though, it went dirty, it went deep, and I love that. I have a really short note on the use of culture and language in this book because it was funny. So basically, I also know Romanian because my mom is from Republic of Moldova. And somehow, I don't know, it feels like a really lucky coincidence. They used a word in Romanian and they pronounced it wrong, and it really grinded my gears. Basically, we are told that there is a secret society named Mana that exists in a lot of Moroi schools, and which royal Morois are usually a part of. This secret society makes its way into St. Vladimir's Academy, and they start recruiting royal Morois that want things to be the same way they were. As a subplot, I don't have anything against it. It's supposed to mean hand in Romanian, but they pronounce it wrong. They say mana. It actually is mena. So that's just a little fact if you were interested and if you came looking for that on this channel. The other thing that I still am trying to decipher is what the fuck is Bordia? Because they say that it's supposed to mean storm in Russian, and I sat there for a long while trying to figure out what word were they trying to use. Because I was listening to the audiobooks, I could not look at the text and see what the word actually is, and if the author fucked it up or the voice actor didn't know how to pronounce it. Because storm in Russian is simply storm. If you have a copy of your book, look it up and write down the word in the comment section. I'd be really appreciative of that because I'm really interested. A lot of stuff happened in this book. I found it to be a bit more dynamic and deep. We're going to talk about certain themes and topics as usual. Let's start with therapy actually, because after the death of Mason in the second book, Rose starts seeing his ghost and she's hiding it, but it affects her efficiency as a guardian and she starts really struggling with these visions. It's actually the effect of her bond to Lissa and her being shadow kissed, which means she was resurrected and now she's seeing creatures from the other side, sort of. When during a big high-scale training session it's discovered that Rose could not defend her Moroi, which was Christian. I wanted to say Christopher again. Oh, you all are going to hate me in the comment section for Christopher. When it's discovered that she couldn't protect him because she got distracted by the ghosts that she's seeing, she's ordered to go to therapy. Finally, this girl needed therapy after the first book, and her therapist actually raises a lot of great points. I was her, she was me, she embodied me in this book. She said to Rose every single thing I wanted to say to her, which kind of gives me a hint that maybe the author is more self-aware than I thought initially. The therapist is a Moroi, and she immediately pinpoints all the issues that Rose has with herself and other people. First of all, she theorizes that Rose has a PTSD, which is not uncommon, I believe, among the Guardians, but they are putting up a really tough front. In my opinion, they need consistent therapy with things they have to see and do. But she also talks about other stuff, such as Rose's relationship with Dimitri. This is the first person that actually frames this relationship as something else. She frames Dimitri as someone unattainable, which is my theory. You know that I think that. She tells Rose that maybe she doesn't care about Dimitri that much. She just wants him because she can have him. And I kind of think, even though Rose still denies it, the therapist is right because the therapist is me, obviously. Rose is trying to disprove it in a very stupid way. I don't know how she proved to herself that it's not true at the end, because it just didn't make sense at all. Their dynamic is very that, even when she finally gets him, and she gets him in this book, she loses him again. And it becomes kind of cat and mouse. The other thing that she talks about with Rose, which was very interesting to me, how Rose sees guardianship and her duties versus her desires and needs. This whole time, Rose was very confident that she wants to be a guardian and that she wants to protect Lissa, specifically because Lissa is her best friend, and it's not just the job that she wants to do because she likes the job, but also she likes the person and she wants to protect this person. If we're comparing it to a regular job, it's like working for your family. And specifically in this situation, a family that you actually love and respect and want to be around. And so it's a very hard situation to be in if you don't like your job or you have issues at your job, because at any other job, there are no interpersonal connections. You don't care what's going to happen to a big corporation. You can quit it anytime. And I love that Rose actually thought about it and actually decided to do something that was against what she was taught. That scene with Lissa, though, at the end did break my heart a little, but I think it's going to do not just Rose but also Lissa good to become a bit more of her own person herself. An interesting addition to the cast of characters and to the topic of slut-shaming in general is Ambrose. In this book, the gang also goes to the royal court to see Queen Tatiana and to be witnesses at the trial of Viktor Dashkov, who's the villain of the first book. I'm wholly ignoring Adrian and Rose cringe because it's cringe for me. I don't like Adrian as a character. I genuinely don't like him. What I want to focus on is two conversations that Rose has with two different people at the court. The first one is Ambrose, who is the personal feeder of Queen Tatiana and is a dumpier. So he's a blood whore, how they like to call them. And I think him being a guy is an interesting twist on that, because we're used to talking about slut-shaming in terms of women and young girls. So him being a dude, interesting choice. The other interesting and subversive choice, and actually a good choice in terms of Rose's development, is making him love his job. He genuinely loves being a feeder. He says that it's the best job that he ever had, and he loves defying expectations. He never loved being a guardian, and he decided to follow his heart, and he doesn't care what other people have to say about that, which immediately makes Rose's hackles rise. But she starts thinking about him a lot, and he's one of the reasons she decided to do something drastic at the end of this book. The second conversation fits a bit better into this third topic that I want to talk, which is Dimitri and Rose's relationship. During their stay at the royal court, they go to this woman who's clearly a witch, and she tells them their futures. The very important thing that happens plot-wise is that she tells Dimitri that he's going to lose something that is the most important to him. At that point, you know that Dimitri is going to die. Obviously, Rose, being a teenager, thinks that it's their love connection and their relationship that he's going to lose, because of course a relationship with a teenage girl as an adult man is the most important thing in his life. The most important thing in his life turns out to be his soul. At the end of this book, the school gets attacked by a nest of strigoi. They take some dampiers and some moroi to their lair, and the dampier, with the help of Rose, decide to go after them and to retrieve people that they can retrieve. Or right before Teresa's takes, of course, Dimitri and Rose bang. Structure-wise, something had to happen with them. I thought that it's going to be a confession, that they're going to kiss, that they're going to be together. But the order went straight up for a sex scene. And of course, if a couple got a scene together and there's still a bit of the plot left, it means that they're going to be separated. I knew that it's going to happen, plus with the foreshadowing, I knew that something is going to happen to Dimitri. I didn't know how brave Richelle Mead is and how tough she is, so I didn't know what actually is going to happen. If she was tougher though, she'd kill him outright. But remembering what she was telling me in the first and the second book about a dampier that had to go and kill their partner that turned strigoi, I knew that something of this sort is going to happen at some point in the books, and Dimitri is taken and turned into a strigoi. So at the end, Rose has to choose what is more valuable to her: to respect Dimitri's wishes, who said before that if he's going to turn into a strigoi, he wants to be murdered, or to stay with Lissa, whom she has to protect. It's her duty. And we see that finally the chips start to fall, and Rose decides to go and find Dimitri and kill him. I think the separation between Lissa and Rose is going to help them to find who they are without each other. I don't know what's going to happen to them power-wise, because they are bonded and connected, but character-wise, I think it would do them good. Rose is on an interesting path. I think it would be entertaining to see her outside of St. Vladimir's and also see her bloom a little bit more into her own, into her powers, and which requirements she has for a job. Her and Dimitri's relationship is invalid to me. I don't care about them. It was funny when Dimitri was all like, yeah, we're going to come out as a couple and I think your mother is going to hate me. I see more and more parallels when it comes to Rose and her mother. If she ends up actually pregnant in the next books from Dimitri and Dimitri is turned strigoi, it would be 95% similarity between these two stories. Rose's dad also kind of disappeared, so we'll see. I'm not happy to tell you that this is gonna be the end of this video, because I started editing it and it turned out to be massive, just really long. I'm scared to continue in the same video. I think I'm going to do a part 2. In the comment section, let's talk about these 3 books. Do not spoil me for the next 3. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. I know I said that if you have not read these books by now, you don't want to read them, and I stand by the statement, but I actually am doing these videos and I want to read them. So no spoilers. Let's talk in the frames of the first 3 books. Tell me what you enjoy about the series. Tell me what you don't enjoy about the series. Let's just talk. What do you think about a TV show that they're planning to make based on this series? I actually think that it might be interesting. In general, I was surprised how many complex, deep topics are discussed in these books. We do not appreciate the older young adult books the way they should be appreciated, because a lot of them are actually pretty intense and unexpected in many ways. So this is it for today. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you soon with another video, and on this note,